Hey guys, welcome back to the David Mathas podcast. I am your host, David Mathas, and I have a really great guest today. It is a friend, former professor, mentor of mine, Dr. Bill Campbell. Dr. Campbell, thanks for coming on.
I'm excited. I've been looking forward to this one for a while.
Uh,
Thank you for the invitation.
no, absolutely, absolutely. I wish we could have got you on sooner, but I'll take any time I can have with you. Dr. Campbell is a professor at the University of South Florida, where most of you guys know I got my master's degree from. And maybe a little biased, but I think runs probably the best physique enhancement lab, research lab in the country as far as universities go. And we're going to talk a little bit more about some research that he's done and kind of where the direction of the program's going right now and what he's focusing on. But this main podcast is going to kind of be about fat loss and optimizing your physique, whether you're a competitor or not. Obviously, if you guys know anything about Dr. Campbell, or you will learn that he is really, really into optimizing competitors' physiques, especially women competitors. That's been a lot of his majority of study and research throughout his years and stuff. So, Dr. Campbell, how'd you get started? Because I know your story. I know kind of the unique journey you got to becoming a professor and getting into this field, but where did you start and how did you get to where you're at before we get into the rest of it?
So I think the story probably starts before I went to college. I played basketball and I love sports. So I wanted to go to college to play basketball.
Me
If I
too.
got the degree, great, but that was not my motivation to go to college. I wanted to play basketball. So I went to a Division III college and played basketball. Play is a hard, that's not really true. I was on the team, but I didn't play that much. I didn't adjust well from high school to college in terms of developing my skill set better.
Gotcha.
And I studied marketing because, in my opinion, that was the easy degree.
Mm-hmm.
And I graduated with a 2.49 GPA. So as I look back, I'm not cut out for business.
My GPA wasn't too far off in my undergrad either, so don't worry.
Yeah, I jokingly tell our students now, I wouldn't have been accepted into the program that I'm a professor of based on my GPA.
That makes this story even that much better. So, all right. So
Yeah.
2.49 GPA. You didn't make it to the NBA, obviously. So, what happens after college? How did you get to the next step?
Yeah, and I didn't make it into the NBA yet. I'm
Yeah.
not closing that door completely.
Holding for that
Not
10-day
until I'm
contract.
50. If I don't make it by the time I'm 50, then I think I'll have a reality check and pursue a different course. But yeah, after college, I was in sales. I sold bug killer and weed killer. And I got to work out of my home, or actually I was a traveling salesperson, really, merchandiser salesperson. So worked out of my home, traveled 5 days a week, really liked that. Like I liked not having to go to an office and having a boss
Yeah.
tell me what to do and what not to do. So I liked that. But what I realized was I loved bodybuilding at that time. I couldn't wait until my day ended so where I could go lift weights. And I really loved nutrition, sports nutrition, dietary supplements. Like I tried everything.
Yeah.
And I just loved like just trying to get an advantage in my training from sports nutrition products or particular like ketogenic diets. I tried that. Just fascinated. So I realized I should probably do something professionally that I love rather than just have a job.
Right.
So probably the age of 22, 23-ish, that's when that thought hit. And then I had to change jobs and I remember I had no science courses, which is actually a good thing. Because if I had taken science courses when I was in undergrad, I wouldn't have done well in them because it wasn't my priority.
Got
So
your GPA down even more. Yep.
yeah, and it's almost sad. Like literally the career that I have now would have been shut off to me because of my GPA. But fortunately, I didn't take any science classes. So I went back to school part-time for a few years and then actually started a master's program at the age of 28. So it took me 4 or 5 years of part-time work to get the necessary prerequisites and to support myself.
Hey, I didn't start mine until I was 32, so you're already 4 years ahead of me.
Yeah, I'm a young guy compared to your story. And yeah, so Started a master's program at 28. Also got married at that time, which was a great blessing because my wife was able to support me and our family, me, her, and our pit bull at the time. Oh yeah, and she also brought 4 cats into the marriage as well. Forgot about that. So then the question was throughout that process, do I want to work in academia or do I want to work in industry at a sports nutrition supplement company? Those were kind of like my 2 passions.
Yeah.
And I got some advice saying, hey, if you want to excel in the industry, you should probably start in academia, develop a name for yourself in sports nutrition research, and then transition.
Yeah.
That's a better path.
Like
So
a logical approach.
yes, yeah. And I started in academia, and I kind of was honest and still am honest with myself. I don't appreciate risk. I love it in other people. Like I love what you do.
Thank you.
But
So
I don't, I
sometimes it
need,
takes me a couple nudges to get going, but I I eventually get there. So
yeah, I, now we have children. So I'm one of those people who needs stability in the paycheck and just, I don't want to have anxiety over that. So I believe I'm in the career that God created me to be in. I can't, well, I mean, hopefully you knew this when you were there, but I love what I do. It is,
yeah, no, I listen. You can't hide it. All right, it just oozes out of you. And part of the reason why, actually, before I go on with that, I learned something that I actually did not know about you. That you and your wife got married during your master's program. Me and my wife got married during my master's program with you. It's when I got married too. So it's kind of a very
yeah,
unique symbolism right there. But no, the reason why I wanted you to tell that story is because I get questions a lot from people that they maybe see where I am right now and wonder like how I got to where I'm at, and they might be in a completely different situation. They're like, oh, I want to get into the fitness industry somehow, right? And I think it's really important that you pointed out that like you can go back at any time, which is what I try to do too. Is like you can go back at any time if you have this desire, and you have this willingness to go through the tough times and the trials. You can start at any point, right? You don't have to have decided at 18 years old this is what you wanted to do. And I mean, for you were selling what was it, bug spray or something?
yeah, herbicides and pesticides, which
Herbicides
is,
and pesticides, and now you have worked yourself up to a very prestigious level from a research standpoint within the industry and everything. And everybody you could possibly probably know in this industry. And it all started because you decided, hey, I like this working out thing. I'm going to put in the effort and take it wherever it can go. So if any of you guys are listening, I really wanted to tell that story because I think that's a great story to highlight. It's never too late, right? I got out of the Army and I had my GI Bill and I knew what I wanted to do. I had my past history that I went through that was driving me to get to where I wanted to get to. It's never too late. So anyways, that's the kind of PSA for go after your dreams right there. So when you decided to go, like when you went for your master's and everything, and then you decided that you were going to kind of go the academia route, what were the next steps from there? Like you went on to your doctorate program at Baylor, correct? Was that Baylor?
yeah. And I would even say before that, as I was getting my anatomy and physiologies, I took general chemistry, organic chemistry, biochemistry. As I was getting all of them, because I knew I wanted to me, nutrition is chemistry. So I wanted to have a strong background in chemistry,
Yeah.
particularly biochemistry. But I had to apply to, I was applying to grad schools. And I won't forget, but Virginia Tech never emailed me back, never returned my phone calls. Colorado State rejected me. And I don't know if I had the I remember not being shocked that I didn't get in, but I'll never forget getting that rejection. It was a letter. And I was like, Colorado State, there was a faculty member there that I wanted to study with. So that remember like, maybe this isn't for me. But yeah, so I found another mentor, Dr. Richard Kreider, who just moved to Baylor from Memphis. And I'll say this because I think it's important. I remember driving. No, actually, I flew to Memphis to meet him.
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't have any money, but probably put it on a credit card at the time. And I said, hey, I want to meet you. And this was right around the time that the internet was becoming this was a pre-internet culture, but
Right.
there still was email, obviously,
Yeah.
but times were different. And the reason I say this, the reason I want to make this a point, meeting somebody in person will always beat a Teams meeting, a Zoom meeting, emails. If you want to go to a program or you want a job,
Yeah.
I will if it's within your power, meet the people that you need to meet in person. It's so much different and better. And I don't have the psychology background to say why.
There's that human connection. I don't know if you remember this, even when I emailed you and just out of the blue, and I kind of told you a little bit about my story. I was like, what do I need to do to get in the program? Guys, Dr. Campbell emailed me right back and he said, can you come in a couple days? You invited me to come to the office, to your office, to campus. And I sat down with you and we talked, and then kind of things went from there on. And we realized like it was a little too late for me to apply for that class that was about to start.
Oh, yeah, depending
And
on the time.
yeah, you let me be a part of the program. You let me help out in the lab and help conduct research. So that personal contact was everything.
Yeah. Yeah, I do remember you were maybe the only person who literally was in my lab for a year prior to starting the master's program.
Yeah, I think I was, because everybody kept saying, "Oh, like when you graduate," I'm like, "I haven't even started yet. I don't even know. I didn't even know if I was going to get in. There was no like you told me. You're like, this doesn't guarantee that you're going to get into the program." I said, "That's fine. I just need a chance. Like I just want to be a part of it and stuff." And luckily, it worked out. And you mentioned something about getting a letter from Virginia Tech and Colorado State and stuff from the rejection. Guys, Dr. Campbell, when he was program head and everything, he called everybody. Like I remember, well, I was already on campus, but you pulled me into the office and you told me that I had got accepted and everything. Like you have that very personal touch. So I think that's one of the things that helps kind of stand you out from others too is you have this love that goes beyond just like educating. Like you want people to be smart, you want people to understand it, right? But I mean, you want people to feel inclusive in the program. You want them to feel like this is their program. It's not just a place where they're coming to get education. This is their home. And I just really respect that about you. That's one thing that just blew me away from the program. So just wanted to add that in there.
Yeah. And it is funny I want to comment on that because I just told my leadership team, my research leadership team, Kara Phillips and Jake Brokel. And I probably said this when you were there, but I don't want to be anybody's friend when they're in the program. Like I don't, I've been around that. So and some faculty members, they'll have students over to their house. They'll go out to dinner with them. I do none, like I keep my family life very separate. I mean, have you even ever met my children?
No, I met your wife one time.
Yeah. But so once you graduate, like I always say, I'll never touch you. Well, of course, I'll never touch any student, but I don't give hugs. But the day that my students graduate, now they're my friends. But while they're in the program, so I'm glad that still comes out. That at least that you said, hey, yeah, this extends. But I'm very guarded on my students, my research assistants. They're not my friends. They're my students, they're my research assistants until they graduate. And then when they graduate, oh boy, now
you still make us feel like part of the family, so you're good to go.
yeah.
So what kind of led you down the path? Obviously, you talked about nutrition was a huge interest in yours, and obviously bodybuilding too and stuff. When you started getting into research and conducting your own research, what kind of led you down more of the female competitor avenue? Because that's where a lot of, I mean, not all of your research, obviously, but you do have a lot of research that kind of is geared towards that. What kind of got you interested in that population in particular?
So it's my love for bodybuilding. At least when I was younger, just passionate about bodybuilding. Dorian Yates was like my favorite bodybuilder at the time.
He's still one of my favorites of all time.
Yeah. And the I would just it was bodybuilding. Now I would say that I'm not a bodybuilding researcher. I like to say that my research now serves people who want to optimize their physiques within a maintainable lifestyle. That is not bodybuilders, and that is not an obese population who are sedentary, but both of those extremes can benefit from my research, and they should, because the research that I do is the closest thing that bodybuilders are going to get to what they do.
Right.
But I don't, and we've done some case studies. We've done some research in physique, female physique athletes. So, but I think my research really serves the serious fitness enthusiast who wants to look like a bodybuilder, but not necessarily step on stage. So whatever audience that is, I call it like the lifestyle physique enthusiast or a recreational bodybuilder.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah, and it's hard to I don't think that niche doesn't have a name, but whatever it is, you get what I'm saying. So that's who I think. And I would say my research really is driven by coaches who coach these people, because the stuff that we're researching is exactly the stuff that coaches deal with every day. And in fact, what coaches struggle with today, I probably will be researching that within the next year. So coaches kind of lead they're leading the charge, and then I'll come around, because research takes time, and I'll try to validate what they're doing, or contradict what they're doing in the trenches.
When you've got plenty of us alumni that can give you feedback as far as what we're trying and what's not working and what is working and stuff. So you've got a whole list of coaches to pull from for research ideas. So, so obviously you talked about wanting to optimize physique. That's where your research is kind of centered around and everything. Obviously, one of the predominant things that we see as coaches and just in society is people trying to lose body fat, right? We live in a society where overweight obesity is taking over, and everybody's always trying to get that weight off quick. So what are some things that you have found throughout your research throughout the years that we can maybe talk about in order to help people optimize that fat loss process? Because I know you agree with this, but like, it's not just about getting it off, right? We want to sustain it once it's off. So what are some things that your research has looked at, and what have you found through your years of conducting research?
I can summarize that quickly. The things that help lose it and keep it off are exercising, particular resistance exercise, and a high protein diet.
Yeah.
If you do those two things, you're setting yourself up for a lower level of body fat, and maintaining a physique that you aspire to. It doesn't guarantee it.
Right.
Those two
You're
things.
upping the odds, though.
Yes.
Yeah.
Those are the two activities: resistance training, higher protein diets.
So if any of my clients are listening right now, you now understand the source of what you hear on a weekly basis from my clients, most likely. So what is the importance of the higher protein for people that might not understand how protein reacts in the body? Why is that one of your 3 pillars, if I might say, to sustainable fat loss? Like, what is it about protein that is so important? Because I see a lot, and I have to talk to mostly, I'm not trying to call anybody out, mostly women are under eating in protein for the most part, from what I see. I do see a lot of men that do it too, so it's not just the women, but predominantly, if I had to put a higher percentage on, I think it's women that tend to undereat on protein. What is so important about that macronutrient when it comes to not only just being healthy, but in particular fat loss?
So one thing I've noticed, and I don't have research to validate this statement, but it is in my practice, what I've seen in different females. If you just make one change to a diet, and that changes, let's just eat more protein, their physique changes. They lose fat, and they typically will gain muscle.
Yeah.
Do nothing else. Just add protein. You don't even have to replace carbs. I've seen it. Now, again, I don't have research on I don't have a specific study. I do have a handful of studies that would validate if you increase protein while you're resistance training, you do not gain fat, even if you are adding calories to what you thought was your maintenance levels. In
Right.
fact, I would put out the challenge. I would like somebody to give me a study where people have gained fat in a situation where the only macronutrient that was added to the diet was protein and they were resistance training. I don't think that study exists. They either don't gain fat or they actually lose fats. And again, a couple studies that have reported that.
Yeah, and I mean, if you're, if you're severely under eating for protein for a while and you start over consuming protein, like you said, going above, and you're pairing that with a good resistance training program, if you do see weight gain, it might be muscle mass that you're gaining, right? So the scale might change a little bit, but like you could replace some body fat with some muscle and see
Yeah.
that body recomposition happening right now. So for years, everyone's go-to was let's jump on the treadmill, let's cardio ourselves to death to lose the body fat. What have you found throughout your years with the research and stuff to support why resistance training is so much more crucial to sustainable fat loss than cardio? Or have you not?
Yeah, I'm actually, as we speak, I'm being obsessive about that research. So I've over the last couple weeks, I think my personal library is it's little over 50 articles that I've summarized
Oh wow.
comparing diets versus exercise, comparing resistance exercise versus aerobic exercise, always in a caloric deficit.
Yeah.
Uh, and I'm I'm still formulating my thoughts on that. So
Okay.
I will soon put a cap on that and be able to say, here's exactly what I think. I'll say something that shocked me as I've gone through this is when in a caloric deficit, we know that resistance training will help you lose more weight from fat than from muscle. So if you have somebody who just reduces their calories and they lose 10 pounds,
Hmm.
75% of that will be from fat, 25% from fat-free mass. I'll just say muscle mass stores. So 3/4 are coming from fat, 1/4 coming from muscle mass stores, even though muscle mass doesn't mean all contractile tissue.
Right.
When you resistance train, now it's maybe 85% coming from fat and only 15% coming from muscle mass stores. So resistance training helps the weight that we lose come more from or prioritizes the fat loss from the weight that we lose. Cardio, aerobic training does the same thing.
Mm,
Whereas I used to think, or at least I wouldn't have been surprised, oh, if I'm dieting and I'm doing cardio, yeah, I'll lose more fat probably, but I'll probably also lose more muscle.
yeah.
It is not the case. Now here's the question, and here's where I'm going next.
Okay.
These 50 some studies are in overweight and obese populations who were not previously active. So the question is, what happens if we like your clients who are already training? Well, one, we're not going to have hardly any research in that because people who are fit, one, don't go on diets. Two, I mean, at least not in the research literature. They do, but nobody studies that.
Yeah.
Two, they have already been exercising. So it's not like this is going to be a new stimulus. So the research is going to be very sparse in people who are already fit or who already have additional muscle mass. But I'm really hoping to find some things that would at least inform my opinion on what may happen. But if you have a beginner and they go on a diet, I'm going to say you should also do cardio. Absolutely 100%. Resistance training, yes,
Right.
but do not avoid cardio. And even if it did nothing, you get all of the fitness benefits. And by fitness benefits, I mean health.
Right.
And
I
you're
keep cardio in for all my clients all year round, whether or not they're building or if they're in a fat loss phase. Now, it's going to vary the amount and the intensity, obviously, but I think that's a really good point you bring in, for your health is cardio, everyone just automatically assumes is just for burning calories. They forget that cardio is actually for your heart health, right? Like that's first and foremost the benefit of cardio. Secondary is that it can help you burn some more calories. So I think it's, and I want to touch on this point in just a second, but you mentioned that those studies you saw that cardio did the same as weight training was in the obese population, right? Were they not resistance training, or were they still doing a little resistance training, but more so cardio than that?
So many of those studies had three groups: a control group that did nothing,
Okay.
or I'm sorry, three groups: a diet group that only reduced their calories, no exercise; another group that dieted plus cardio; and then another group that did a diet plus resistance training; and sometimes a fourth group, diet plus cardio plus resistance training.
Okay.
And the consensus is diet plus resistance training improved the composition of the weight loss. More was coming from fat.
Mhm.
But cardio, aerobic training did the same thing, maybe a little bit less, but it was
Minuscule.
almost every single step. Now, I need to be a scientist here. Not always statistically significant,
Uh-huh.
but always 90% more of the studies always in the same direction of preserving more muscle mass. So you just said cardio, not only does it burn more calories, not only does it induce some health benefits, heart health benefits, it also helps preserve muscle mass if you're starting up, at least in a sedentary population, um, beginning your training. It will help you preserve muscle mass.
But if
Study after
if you're
study.
overweight or obese.
Yes. Yep.
So
Now, let me add to that.
yeah.
It may be the same thing in people who bodybuild.
Mhm.
I don't know. I think they have more muscle to lose, so I could definitely see an argument for, oh, maybe don't do as much cardio when you're dieting.
Yeah.
But is that different between an obese person and somebody resistance training? I don't know. Like that's where I have my thoughts now, but I want to go to the very small body of research in fit people to see if I can at least get something to give me a strong opinion on this.
Yeah, and you brought up a good point a little bit ago that one of the reasons why I think, and I think you might agree, just, let me know if you don't, but I think that it's really hard to equate a lot of research to like the bodybuilding type lifestyle because they don't want they don't want their programs messed with, right? They don't want to follow somebody else's stuff. They don't want to, go through all this testing, all this research. Bodybuilders and people that are physique athletes, for example, like they're very particular in what they do, what they eat, how they eat, what they train. So we have to just kind of do our best extrapolating like data from different studies to kind of get it to apply where it may apply for you. And I think that it's really important for people to understand research and for you to come on here and talk about it is a great example because you've conducted so much research and you dig into it. Like you just said, like you're 50 research articles deep and you still haven't come to a general consensus yet on what you think. But for people that are reading research, like they're wanting to go out on their own and read some, what are some things that they need to look for in order to tell, okay, is this study something that I should actually pay attention to? Does it have anything to do with me? Like, what are some things that people should look for like reliable research?
One thing that I would suggest is, and this is going to go against the grain. I never start with meta-analyses or systematic reviews. I refuse to start with them
Okay.
because I don't want to be biased by somebody else's pooling of the studies.
Yeah.
So now again, I guess I'm a professional researcher, so I have the time, the energy. But I would advise people find 4 or 5 articles in the topic, original research articles of interest, and see where they take you in your own mind. Put them in a spreadsheet or on paper. What are they finding? Just take your notes, and then in your mind, you usually, after you do about, I guess my house rule is 6 studies. If I read 6 studies on a topic, I pretty much know the direction of that research.
Yeah. Okay. I see.
So yeah, so just because I've been obsessive about this in the month of May with these studies. There are, 52 studies that I found so far that I've summarized. I have a list of, I think, maybe 9 narrative reviews or systematic reviews on that same topic.
Okay.
But I feel like in my head, I don't care what they say. I'm looking at the actual studies. They're
Yeah.
always trending in the same direction. So the meta-analyses really can only come to one conclusion unless they're finding other studies that I haven't been able to find.
Yeah.
So my advice is don't start with reviews. Let me just say, for somebody who's serious about this, start with the original research. Not that you have to exhaust the whole literature. Most people aren't going to have time to do that. But start with the minutia of the original studies, kind of formulate your own opinion, and then check that against the meta-analyses and systematic reviews.
Now, for somebody that's listening to this that doesn't understand our
Good
lingo
point.
with research, what is a meta-analysis?
A meta-analysis is a summary of a body of literature. So the 50 studies that I just said that I've summarized,
Mhm.
they'll take all 50 and they will perform, let's just say, some mathematical transformations to the data and say this is helpful for this or it's not.
Yeah.
So it's a summary of a large body of research. So they'll take the individual studies.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is read a few of those individual studies first to get an idea before starting with these reviews.
Right. And thanks for clarifying. I know a lot of people are gonna be like, what is a meta-analysis? Like, I don't know what that is.
I'm glad I
If I
violated my own rule.
like I'll have I'll have people especially when I do Instagram lives or something like that, or Q&As on my Instagram, somebody will be like, oh, I heard this study, and does this apply to me, so on and so forth. So I think it's really important to look at obviously the population being studied, right? So somebody like, until you kind of analyze all these studies you're reading right now, somebody who's fit might not benefit from some of these obese studies that you're reading yet. We don't know. Maybe they will in the future or whatever. But if you guys are out there and you're trying to look for research to read, like Dr. Campbell's advising you to do, you have to understand if it is going to actually apply to your situation, because a lot of these studies are under very, very controlled situations, right? And it may not apply to your specific circumstance. One thing to look for too is this in a trained or an untrained population? If you're someone who's been working out a lot and you go to read a study that might be based off of untrained individuals, people that don't have very much workout experience, right? It might not necessarily apply to your situation. So there's a lot of things to look for in research before you just kind of hang your hat on, okay, the data shows this, so I have to do this, right? There's different circumstances and stuff. One of the things that I think has come up a little bit lately, and I'm blanking on the name of the study, but people have kind of gotten all up in arms a little bit about how diet breaks are not useful, because there was
Mhm.
a study that came out, that said it what it basically said that there was no physiological benefit or something like that to taking diet breaks. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah, that's the study that was just published was by Jackson Payos from
Yes.
Australia,
Yes,
and
that's what it is. Yep.
very, very good study design too, in fit people, actually, not for once, not a study in only overweight sedentary people.
Yeah. So based off of that, obviously, I think there needs to be a lot more research done before there's a general consensus on it and stuff. But for someone that reads that, it's like, oh, okay, I don't need a diet break, right? What are some arguments that you might have towards incorporating diet breaks that might not have anything to do with the physiological aspects of it?
Yeah, and I'll just prepare your audience. The movement towards diet breaks being useless is only going to get louder. It's not it's gonna keep continuing. And I think and I always get confused on the timing of when my former students were there. Did you help us with our diet break study? Are
Yeah.
are
Yep.
you on that author line? Do you know?
Yep.
Okay, so you've seen it.
Yeah.
Okay. So research from our own lab is going to be published this year, we hope. And it also is going to come out. And the reason I can say this is because we presented some of this data at last year's ISSN conference. It did not have a benefit to our resistance trained female subjects. So yeah, you're going to be one of the few people in the world who actually researched this
Yeah,
as a side.
that's why I wanted to bring it up to you. So
Yeah. So a couple thoughts on that. There's if we're going to define a diet break as taking at least 1 week off from the diet, sometimes 2 weeks, sometimes more, but at least 1 week, we have about 5 or 6 studies in that would fit that realm. And out of those 5 or 6 studies, most of them don't show a benefit. Sometimes they do. So I'm going to start with there's never a harm. There's never been shown a harm that it causes weight gain by taking. So I would start there.
yeah,
I
that's
think
really important to point out too, because there's anyways, I'm gonna go into that in a minute. You keep going. I didn't mean to interrupt. Sorry.
that's all right. So never a harm. And I think where people are quick to discard diet breaks is, well, it didn't cause more fat loss, or it didn't cause me to gain more muscle. And I think that's a filter that would only apply to potentially to a competing bodybuilder.
Mm-hmm.
It's not always about trying to hack the system to try to get some benefit.
Right.
The other thing is, and this really explains our study well, and again, we talk, as you know, we're going to talk about this in our discussion. The reason that you employ a diet break is to offset the negative adaptations that dieting introduces. And what are those? Well, if you diet for a long period of time, you typically have a suppressed metabolism. You start to lose more muscle mass. You get more hungry.
Mm-hmm.
And if a diet break, at least in the literature that has been positive, you insert them and they help prevent these negative adaptations.
Absolutely.
So in our case, we're going to report diet breaks weren't beneficial, nor were they harmful, but we didn't have a suppression of metabolic rate in our females. They had high protein. They were resistance training. So the utility of a diet break is only going to quote unquote be beneficial if there are negative adaptations that are occurring. Without those negative adaptations, a diet break isn't offering anything.
Yeah.
Now, I choose to look at diet breaks from a different perspective of, is it giving me anything? I choose to look at it as a lifestyle physique person like myself would look at it. So I'm going to Orlando in, I don't know, sometime this summer for a week.
Okay.
I'm dieting pretty much for the next 10 weeks, but I'm not going to diet that week. I'm taking a diet break. Am I taking a diet break because I think it's going to cause me to lose more fat when I come back? No. I'm taking a diet break because I don't want to diet when I'm in Orlando. I want to eat, and I mean, I'm going to eat at maintenance. But for my lifestyle, I'm going to look forward to this break. I'm going to be able to enjoy things with my family. So from a psychological lifestyle approach, I think they are invaluable. Now, let's take it one more step. If you're a competing bodybuilder, you may not have the luxury of doing a diet break because you have to step on stage on this date. So I get that. We also have to admit, if you have a fat loss goal in mind, and if you insert diet breaks, it will take you longer. So that you have to appreciate that. But I would say that's a good thing. I will never convince somebody to lose fat faster. The slower you lose body fat, I believe the more ingrained those habits become as part of your life, and you are more likely to maintain that optimized physique. All right, I'm done.
That's a huge point made. Behavioral factors that you learn along the way. Now, I have changed my stance a lot on diet breaks since that study. Like I was one that thought, okay, there might be more of a physiological benefit. But the way that, at least the last year or so, that I've been incorporating them and trying to explain them to my clients is exactly what you said. This is not going to necessarily enhance your fat loss, right? But this is going to keep you healthier and more sustainable along the way. And I used to have it set where every 4 weeks or so, we would do a diet break, right? I've abandoned all that. And I listen to the data. I look at the data. I listen to my clients. I listen to how they're feeling. Are they getting sick more often? Are they, all this stuff that comes into factor before I decide, all right, is it a diet break? And I have all of them give me at least a 4 weeks heads up if they know something big's coming up, like you going to Orlando, right? So I have a client that we just went through a great reverse dieting period. She is going camping in like 4 weeks. And so we decided, okay, we're going to hit it hard. We're going to get really aggressive for like 3 weeks. And then we're going to back off and give you that diet break for that week that you're gone, because you have to develop these sustainable habits along the way, right? You mentioned a good thing about the clients during prep that might not have the luxury of taking a diet break. We're finding that out with one of my clients right now. He's going through a prep. We had planned on trying to do a diet break, right? But
Yep.
going through it and we're like, nah, we don't have that luxury anymore, man. We had a couple weeks where things didn't go exactly the way that we wanted, and now we got to keep pushing. But developing those habits long term. And when we first started the podcast, you had talked about the importance of high protein and resistance training during fat loss. But you mentioned the third pillar right now, and that's dieting slowly. And the reality is it's going to take longer, right? If you have to throw in diet breaks. But are you going to still be able to enjoy life? Are you going to be able to enjoy those vacations and still make progress, right? You have to just decide, like, are you wanting it all off now? Or do you want to work slower, get it off, and then sustain it and have more joy along the way, right? And then when I start seeing those negative adaptations starting to occur, like you're talking about, hunger suppressed, metabolism suppressed, maybe, like I said, someone's getting a little bit, they're getting sick more often, things like that. All right, let's back off for a week. All right. But by no means that's not going to help you. I guess, I don't know. Now that I'm kind of talking about that, maybe in a way it is a benefit for fat loss because you're giving your body that break, right? So that when you do go back, you're fresher. So I guess in that sense, it's a benefit, right? But it's not like it's going to speed up your metabolism for that week, and then all of a sudden you're going to go back and you're going to start losing more weight. It's just really giving your body that rest it needs, because we just keep hammering away at calorie deficit after calorie deficit, increased cardio, increased energy expenditure. We're not robots. Our body's going to break down at some point if we don't build in these breaks along the way. But I've gotten away from pre-planning them unless there are special occasions I know that are coming up. I just kind of listen to my client's body and the data, and we go off of that.
Yeah, I'm not a coach, and actually you teach me about coaching, but intuitively that's what I would do. If we're reaching a place where they're not responding, then let's change something. And I think that's a perfect thing to implement in terms of a change.
I've had clients, and I mean, we've gone 16, 20 weeks not taking a diet break. And they're like, when are we gonna do a diet break? I'm like, you're losing at almost a 1% total body weight loss per week. You're feeling fine. Your calories are still good. Why would you want to end this right now? Like,
Yeah.
why do you want to
Yeah,
prematurely?
you don't want to fix something that ain't broke.
Exactly. So I guess kind of the last topic I want to kind of pick your brain a little bit about, because I know your time is valuable and I appreciate all that. Rapid fat loss. Now, when I was just getting ready to graduate, and we were starting to kind of plan out for that rapid fat loss study and everything that you guys were going to conduct the following spring and everything. Whatever happened with that? Did you go through with it? Did you learn anything about it? And like, kind of how was it supposed to be set up?
So remind me again, did you help with that study?
I was part of the two groups that were developing the protocols, and then it got
Okay.
on.
So you graduated before we implemented it.
Yeah, so
Okay.
I never got to be a part of actually implementing it.
Okay.
So I'm kind of even asking for my own curiosity, just like,
I just sent out abstracts to everybody. Didn't you? Were you one of them? Did you get abstracts from me yesterday?
oh yeah, you know what? That was the text you sent about sending it to the email, and I don't have access to it, so I haven't been able to look at it yet.
Okay. Yeah. So you are a co-author on that because you helped design the study. So you need to look at that.
Yeah.
It's
That's what's weird is because but I was not involved like in the actual study and everything, but
yeah, you didn't collect the data.
yeah, correct.
So, and we have not published this data yet. So actually that's not true. Last year we did present the metabolic rate data at ISSN. So
So
yeah.
what, without going into the specifics of the data, because we can't really go into that, was there any benefit or any negative outcomes to doing an aggressive fat loss phase when it comes to maintaining lean body mass?
Traditionally, my thoughts have been do not do crash diets. You'll lose muscle mass, you'll lose metabolic rate.
Mm-hmm.
After we present this data, it's pretty cool. I'll say that I am now challenged on some of these thoughts.
That's that's exciting, and that's what's awesome about research is that, you know, I try to tell people like, listen, this is what we know now, right? We're just going off the best information that we have at this current time. That doesn't mean 6 months from now that can't change. I mean, hell, there could be a study out right now that changes the way we think about things, and maybe there is, right? But you can only go off of what you know now. So, you know, it's really interesting because so many people, obviously, like I said, they want to try to get the weight off fast, right? But they're afraid of losing all that muscle, that hard-earned muscle along the way and everything. And I'm not really, I don't really know of too many scenarios where like a rapid fat loss protocol would necessarily be warranted. I mean, maybe like in a prep, like, you know, prep situation and stuff like that. But for the common person, but yet everyone still wants to do it as fast as they possibly can. So
Yeah.
I'm interested not only for everyone else to read it, but for myself to read it and see what happens when it gets published and everything. But
I do want to. I
yeah,
do have one thought. Let's say you do lose muscle mass from a diet, and we don't want that to happen. You spend a lot of time building up that muscle mass.
right.
It's also true that you're going to gain that muscle mass back after your diet's over. It's not like that's gone forever.
Yeah, that's true.
It's easier to regain muscle that you've previously built than build it the first time. Now, while that's true, if you lost muscle and you do get it back over the next weeks or months, that's still time that you didn't build new muscle. So I don't want to minimize the harm, but don't think if you lost let's just say you lost a pound of muscle because you didn't diet well for 2 weeks. You dieted too hard, you didn't eat enough protein, you missed some workouts. Okay, you lost muscle, yes, but you can get that back with less effort, in my opinion, than what it took to build that the first time. So you don't need to lose sleep. Well, you can lose sleep because I would lose sleep.
Well, so you know, one of the things that cracks me up is, you know, people be like, I'm going away on vacation for a week. I can't lift weights. Like, I'm going to lose everything. No, you won't. You're not going to lose. Like, it's harder to lose muscle than you think. Like your body, once you build it, once you put in the effort to build it. I mean, my training has sucked the last year or so. Like, I've had injuries and stuff. I haven't trained nearly to the extent that I did before. And I've lost a little bit of muscle, like, but not as much as I thought I would have. And it's because
Yeah.
of all those years of building it back up. So that's why, you know, making sure that you implement resistance training is not only part of your fat loss diet, but just your health, your general fitness regimen in particular is so important and everything. But are there any exciting studies you guys have planned for the lab coming up in the rest of 2021 or 2022? Anything that you
Yeah.
guys talked about?
Yeah, the one, and this actually ties us back to where we started our talk today, was on protein for females. So we're doing a protein intake study in non-resistance trained females. So my lab previously published a study showing high proteins are clearly better for resistance trained females.
Right.
There was no question. They gained muscle mass. They actually lost some fat with higher protein. What we're doing now is kind of shifting this to say, what if, let me put this through the coach's perspective, because this is a coaching study,
Yeah.
a physique coach study. if you have a new client who is new to training, and you're going to say, okay, I'm going to work with you. Let's put you on a 3-day per week resistance training, whole body, just, general fitness program. But we also want to increase your protein. Do we need to do that? Does it matter for a beginner? Because we know that a beginner, when they start lifting weights, they're going to build muscle.
Right.
They're probably going to drop fat.
Those newbie
So,
gains.
yes. So I'm not a psychologist, but I'm aware. I don't want to add 5 habits to somebody if we only have to add 2. Let's do as little change as possible. Let's not, move mountains if we don't need to. So we have 3 groups in this study. These are all non-resistance trained females. One group is our control group. We're telling them, lift weights in our lab so we can watch you 3 days per week. Do not change your diet whatsoever.
Okay.
The other group, we're calling it the tracking
Let me
group.
interrupt you. Are they so if they're purposely in a calorie surplus, they can stay in there, or if they're in a calorie deficit, they can stay in that just based off
Well,
what their goal is at that time?
yeah, no, our assumption is that they're not trying to lose weight. This is not a dieting study.
Okay.
So if they're dieting, they're excluded. So no diets,
Okay.
at least not a purposeful diet. If for some reason they lose weight during the study, okay, well, but they understand that this is not a weight loss or weight gain. For as far as they're concerned in the control group, we just want you to start lifting weights.
Gotcha. Okay.
The tracking group, we're telling them, we want you to eat your weight in grams of protein as you weigh in pounds. So if a female weighs 163 pounds, we want her to eat 163 grams of protein and track that. So we teach them how to track their macros, and they're doing the same workout as the control group.
Okay.
And they literally track their macros with the only goal being hit your daily weight in pounds in grams of protein.
Okay.
The third group, this is where the study's really cool. The third group, we're telling, increase your protein, but do not track anything. Just simply double your protein intake from 3 or 4 foods that you normally eat. So if you normally have 2 eggs for breakfast, eat 4. If you normally have chicken on your salad, double the chicken. If you normally have fish once a week, eat it twice per week. So this is kind of in the realm of intuitive eating, where we want them to consciously increase their protein as they're starting their resistance training program, but we don't want to teach them, we don't want them to track, because that's another habit, that's another skill.
Right.
And maybe they don't need to track as a beginner. And maybe what we're going to find, you don't need to even increase protein. Maybe if you're just in the control group, maybe just training alone is enough with normal protein as you begin. Now, we do know as you become trained, it becomes important. Right. But I can't point to a study in non-resistance trained females to validate that. So we're going to find out a lot. And this is literally the best kind of study for coaches who are working with new female clients.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I'm going to be interested to see what you learn from that, because I agree with you. If somebody is new to training, I don't think they need to necessarily be on as high a protein as we might have an athlete be on, right?
Yep.
Those newbie gains, that stimulus is just so fresh. You're gonna just look at a weight and hopefully put on some muscle. I think where I would worry about people not tracking, though, is if they are severely under eating in protein. Are you worried at all about, like, because I literally have some women that come to me, they're eating like 35, 40 grams of protein a day, and they're 125, 130 pounds, just really, really low in protein. That's the only thing that I could see that might be detrimental to even a newbie building muscle, is that if they just don't have even enough of their basic building blocks to do it, I don't know, like somebody that's taking in fairly close to what their minimal amount of protein should be, I wouldn't think for a newbie like that would be that big of a deal, right?
Yeah.
But somebody that's just like really, really under eating, that just makes me think. So I'm just really curious to see where those studies go and everything, because the people that you say are not tracking, right? They're not going to track their anything.
Yeah. They're not tracking, but they're consciously increasing their protein foods.
Okay. Yeah, it's just it always makes me pause to think like, what is their increasing? Like, are they going from 20 grams of protein a day to 40 grams? Like,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yes.
obviously doubling, that should be a positive move, right? But
Is
for
it enough? Yeah.
enough,
And
that's the only thing that I would be curious about.
well, what we hope to be able to find is to answer and say it's not enough. Like if you
Yeah.
depending on how the data comes out, again, the two extremes are you not only need to increase your protein, but you really need to track if you're going to try to get some actual muscle gains.
You know, what
Or the
really,
other extreme is don't even worry about your protein for the first 2 months of your training. It doesn't matter.
yeah, you know, it'd be really interesting afterwards is the people that weren't track that just like kind of doubled their, if you saw no increase in muscle mass or whatever, and you actually had those people go back afterwards and track to see, and then see where their protein number actually was based off of what they're used to eating. I don't know, that's just data. Protein in particular is just so fascinating to me, and it's just many roles in the body and stuff, not just for building muscle, but just mostly for building muscle. I mean, I guess that's what I'm really interested in the most and everything. But yeah, I would just worry about, you know, from a coaching perspective and seeing some intake forms that I get from people and how low their protein is, and you know how heavy, like how big they are. I'm just like, oh, I don't know. I'm always one that hurries and jacks their protein up. So you know, this would be very beneficial for from my professional standpoint to know like, okay, do we really need to worry about that or not? So I'm gonna be looking for those results very eagerly whenever you get those published. So
Yes.
um,
Yep.
well, I want to thank you so much for coming on. I mean, there's so much more that we could talk about, and we'll have to have you back on for another podcast and everything. But can you tell people where they can find you? And I'll direct them there. I'll put all the links and stuff below in the.
Oh, yeah, thank you. I'm only at least at this point, I'm only on Instagram and my username is Bill Campbell PhD.
Yep. And I'll put you guys, if you guys aren't following him on there, he does what 2 or 3 times a week. He'll put up quizzes and stuff, and he's got a really good really good feed to follow and everything. Some questions on there that I have to kind of sit back and pause for a second and be like, I know I should know this, and I'm going to feel really embarrassed if I get it wrong because I'm sure he taught it to me during class.
Yeah, but some of the questions I get wrong, like I'm
Yeah.
reading an article and I'm like, I didn't know that. And so
Yeah.
I'll put it a question like knowing I would have gotten it wrong if I didn't make the question. So
Okay.
it's not really about I mean, yeah, you want to quiz yourself, but some of them are, purposefully deceitful in how I'm asking it to make you get it wrong.
Yeah. Well, but I love how you caption it and you explain it, because then it makes me not feel so bad. It's like, okay, all right, now I see where he's going with this. I see where he's going with this. But
Yeah.
thank you so much for coming on. It's great catching up and everything. And for everyone that's tuning in, I hope you guys got something out of this. We're definitely going to at some point have Dr. Campbell back on because he's a wealth of knowledge. Make sure you go follow him. And Dr. Campbell, thanks again.
All right. Thank you very much.
All right, guys, make sure to please go subscribe and share. It helps the channel out tremendously and the podcast out tremendously. And I appreciate all you guys. And I'll be back with another guest soon.